Hello, my name is Chrysandra Chacon. This week's discussion board, one of them is Latin America's biggest problem and how we believe we can solve it. This is a broad question, of course, but in general, I do believe that Latin America's biggest problem today is poverty. According to the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, also known as the ECLAC, the number of people in Latin America living in extreme poverty, those that do not have access to very basic needs like food, water, or shelter, is increasing. From 2016 to 2017, it rose from 9.9 to 10.2%. The ECLAC also claimed that the number of cases of extreme poverty in Latin America is at the highest point it's been since 2008. The reason behind much of the poverty is the income inequality that we do see in Latin America. This inequality is the reason behind many protests and riots, but as we have seen in previous articles, these protests are dangerous and sometimes have very little effect on legislation. Nearly 40% of unemployed people in Latin America earn wages below the minimum established. This is especially true in the cases with women and young people. In order to fix this issue, this income gap must be closed. A few Latin American countries that have seen decreases in the number of people living in poverty in the country can attest that in order to lower the percentage of extreme poverty, there must be an increase in income from wages in low-income households, as well as pensions and transfers to low-income households. Most of the numbers I've pulled so far are from the ECLAC website, if you wanted to check those out. But another article, the Pan Am Post, claimed that there are a few steps that any Latin American countries could take to reduce poverty, these being the rule of law, another being free trade, privatized state-owned enterprises, another one, end central banking, introduce competing currencies to end the war on drugs, less foreign aid, remove barriers to business, embrace the zone for employment and economic development, and to free market education. Of course, all of those are much easier said than done, but they would help. Now, I'm not an economic expert, but I do believe that all of these things would be very beneficial to any of the countries and economies in Latin America. If any number of these ideas were implemented, there could be real change, and we could potentially see the relief and stability in Latin America that we haven't seen in years. Ending poverty in Latin America should have a domino effect, I believe, potentially creating solutions to some of Latin Americans' other really big problems. Lower levels of poverty could prevent people from joining gangs and terrorist groups, since many of these groups are formed to spite the government and to make a living in the extreme poverty that surrounds them. Decreasing the levels of poverty would also mean less reliance on foreign countries, which would fix the problems that come with tourism that we read about before. There would be less wear and tear on the environment from paths and hotels, deforestation, and we could possibly see a decrease in sex trafficking around tourist destinations. These issues regarding taxes that we've read about in Colombia would also be resolved, since an increase in bus fares wouldn't be as financially devastating to people, since so many other issues piggyback off of poverty. I believe that this is Latin America's biggest issue currently, and to focus on decreasing the percentages would be very beneficial for multiple reasons.